Hey y'all, welcome to the Hey Dad, Can You Talk podcast. My name is Bailey Garner. I'm your host, and every other week we call my dad Toby, and we just have a real and raw and honest conversation about things that are going on in life, whether it's relationships, parenting, mental wellness. We talk about all of it, and we want to bring you along too because you're not alone in your struggles. Lots of times these things aren't talked about, and you might feel like you're the only one, but you're not. And so let's go ahead and do it. Let's call my dad.
What's up, B?
Hey, Dad, how are you?
I was looking for my water when you called. I don't know where I put it. I'm still trying to, hydrate after the visit to Mouseville.
Yeah, so if people don't follow us on social media, we just recently got back from Disney World for spring break. And I actually wanted to ask you about if you would tell us about the trip, and then if there was anything on that trip that spurred some things you felt like you should share with parents based upon your observations there.
Well, there were 11 of us. That's our family size for you guys that don't know us. 5 children between the ages of 7 and 3. Can you let that sink in for a moment? 11 people, 5 of which are children in between the ages of 7 and 3. And my children would tell you that it was a trip of a lifetime. I would call it a trip to remember. I will always remember it. It was quite the scene. I sat there with your mom waiting on you guys because we were struggling for some shade. And I remember saying, "Hey, Mom, look around. Show me one person walking by here smiling." And over the next 20 minutes, she started laughing because I think she saw one. And I said, "No, that's a teenage boy that's hormone gridlocked. We got this arm around that girl. That doesn't count." And it was quite the trip. It was fun, but it was tiring.
Yes, extremely. We did 3 park days in a row. Not many breaks. And I thought the kids, though, did much better than expected. So
yes, they did. I was pleasantly surprised at the small amount of meltdowns, especially the last day when we had a 12-plus hour day, which I was questioning our intelligence. But hey, we were just living in you and Michelle's world. Y'all were playing.
Yeah. How did we end the day, Dad?
We ended the day with 15 to 20,000 of our closest friends packed together in a no-sitting zone in front of the castle. It is the height of claustrophobia. 2 of the children, those are 2 of the meltdowns we had in that moment, watching a fireworks show, and then us all trying to exit. It was, and then going to wait to get on the bus to go back to our hotel. It was quite the scene.
And the gift shop also in between that too.
Yeah, let's don't even talk about the gift shop. I'm just trying to leave that out of my memory at the moment.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, so, I usually start with a story. And so I've got one for you. I actually haven't told you this story. Sometimes you've heard these, but you haven't heard this one. So, and it usually has to do with Gideon. Why is that? I don't know. We were at soccer game Tuesday night. He was playing his best friend, playing against him. And that team we were playing against is very good. They've played together for a long time. Gideon is uber competitive, and he, was like all pumped up. We're going to win, Well, they ended up losing. And he had the biggest meltdown ever, ran through the tunnel, pushing people over. It was so embarrassing. Then was telling his teammates it was their fault that we lost because they missed goals. I was just so embarrassed. What is happening? And it was all, and then he spent the whole ride home crying. and throwing like just so upset that they lost. So it turned from anger into sadness into like pity, whatever. And I was just sitting there like, first of all, I know it's our job to teach him how to lose well. Although I was like, why can't they just know this? Because it was a hard thing for me to watch. And I'm like telling myself, this is a teaching moment. But at the same time, I was like so mad. And then also like how to, me and Grant were both really struggling with how to have empathy for him and allow him to show his emotions, but then like, when do you be like, okay, that's enough, because he just kept going and kept going. And I'm more likely to coddle and Grant's more likely to be like, just stop, and doesn't have as much patience for that, So I just was like, what do we do in this moment when our kids are having big emotions, whether it's anger or sadness? How do we like affirm them and let them know it's okay, but then also too much is too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I can picture that happening.
I know you can't. I know you can't.
Well, at the risk of sounding like your mom, who she and I would have some conflict over her instant response to that kind of behavior was, well, they're just tired. Mm-hmm. And she was half right and half wrong. Half right in that you have to give some credibility to the level of fatigue after, the trip we just described. Mm-hmm. But B, you don't want to teach your kids that their fatigue is an excuse. They're not going to become a victim and let them excuse their fatigue as reason for them to operate that way. Mm-hmm. And so it goes back to that thing. I think you've heard me say so many times. I mean, you want to feel your feelings, but I think in training up a child, it is helping them understand that their feelings are not, they're a terrible steering wheel for their life. Mm-hmm. And so they cannot allow their feelings to take them to places of unacceptable behavior. That's the thing, is the boundary of what is acceptable and unacceptable in the midst of feeling. See, this is my high horse right now, because I feel like, not with obviously just Giddy, but I'm not speaking directly to your situation, but just in general, I feel like there's a lot of, oh, you poor baby happening in today's world, and kids from 7 to 17, like if they're not turning in homework assignments, if they're not following through on commitments, all of a sudden the answer is, well, they're depressed or they're anxious, when kids are depressed and anxious. But learning how to, in my book, Not Yet, I talk about learning how to play scared, which is just another way of talking about learning how to not be controlled by your emotions. If we're not careful, their disappointment, their anxiety, their depression, their whatever it is, it becomes their identity, and it's not okay. And so that's the line you have to address. You address hey man, I understand. There's two pieces you're talking about here. One side is you're talking about this competitiveness that takes you to that place. What is it? There's a difference, Gideon, between losing and being a loser. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's the identity thing. Mm-hmm. That's one. There's a huge difference between losing and being a loser.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference in not getting asked to a dance and being an orphan, being unattractive, being unliked. There's a huge difference. Mm-hmm. So all those levels. But then the other side is, hey man, here's how we respond when life's disappointment comes. Here's what's okay and not okay. Mm-hmm. So you've got two different topics that have to be addressed. I think the first one you have to address, just my opinion, is the boundaries of what's okay and not okay. It's not okay to knock kids over. It's not okay to run screaming through a tunnel. That's not okay to take your frustrations out on other people. And it's definitely not okay to put that on your teammates. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you can address the other.
Yeah, for sure. And it's hard because I instantly want to be like, these are all the things you're not doing. You like in the moment teach him. And I feel like when he's in that state, he doesn't accept that, is talking about it later. And I will say, like yesterday or the day before, his best friend like tried to come talk to him after the game, and Gideon wouldn't talk to him. And so I said, we saw them yesterday at our house church, and I said to Gideon, are you going to talk to him? And he's like, yeah, I think I need to apologize because I was upset and I wasn't very nice. And I was like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So at least
that's
he
maturity.
could see it, but
that's a step, and you need to affirm that step,
Yeah. It's hard too, because, I'm a pretty emotional person and my husband's not. And so and I feel like Gideon has a lot of me in him when it comes to like reaction, how he reacts to things and where he goes in his feelings. And so, it's like Grant and I are learning together too, how we meet in the middle on that. Cause to him, taking your like reacting and being emotional isn't always a good thing. And to me, that's just how I am. And so there is like a level where I've had to learn to control it, but there's still sometimes you just have to have emotions, And so I feel like that's been hard for us to figure out with two different parents who have grown up two different ways and two different personalities, And so I don't, the day before all this happened, I had a huge meltdown in front of my kids because of all this stuff we're going through with stuff going on in our house. And
house repairs.
Yeah.
Sometimes house you say repairs. In our house and they're going to text you.
Okay. We came home from Disney to some flooding. And so we're having some things we're dealing with our like repairing our house. And it's just been overwhelming. So I like all came to a head and I just started crying and my kids were there. And part of me was like, I feel like it's good for them to see that I can be that it's okay to be emotional, but then on the other hand, I feel like I did get over it. So maybe I set a good example. I don't know. I was so emotional, but sometimes, I feel like my husband he would say this if he were on here, he isn't very reactive when he has emotions like me. So I know you and mom are different too. How did y'all figure out how to parent together when you came from such different backgrounds and you have such different reactions to like hardship? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And that was a challenge for us as well. And it was, so you have to figure out what you agree on before you wade into what you disagree on. Right. Let's find because what happens in those kind of situations is the focus turns to what we disagree on instead of, hey man, here's some things we agree on. Grant would agree with you. I guarantee you, Grant would agree with you that there are ways that you deal with your emotions, the boundary issue that it's unacceptable. He would say it's unacceptable for Gideon to push people over and scream at his teammates. He would say that. So y'all agree on that. Now, you may disagree on whether he ought to be that emotional or not, but it's like, again, you don't want to tell a kid who has that in his DNA to not feel his feelings. That raises huge counselor bills, right?
Yeah.
And so, sometimes your mother would say to me, well, are you upset that she's da-da-da-da-da? Or are you upset that she's sad about that? And I'm like, well, no, I'm not. I'm okay. You're teaching me about girls, 'cause that was our thing. There were no girls in our home. I'm okay with the sadness, the whatever. What I'm not okay with is a slamming door. I'm not okay with a screaming fit. That's what's not okay to me. And so we would agree on those things.
Yeah.
And so if you begin with what you agree on, then what you disagree on it's not like a deal breaker, right?
Yeah.
With Gideon, it's not a deal breaker that Grant doesn't understand people showing their emotions because that's not who he is or how he was raised. That's okay.
Yeah.
where the challenge would come if it would be you pushing that, which I know you're not, but you pushing the fact that him pushing his buddies and screaming, well, he was just emotional.
Mm-hmm.
That's not okay either. So you got to find that place in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And something I'm not good about is having those conversations outside of the heated moment. Like I want to talk about it then, and then that's a terrible time to talk about it because we're all heated up, whether it's
right,
me, And so something I want to do a better job of is having conversations about this. Like, what do we agree on? What do we not, when we're not in the moment of it,
Yeah. And so, I mean, just like anything else in life, the greatest teacher is always pain. The pain point is where you learn.
Right.
You don't learn from when it's going great. Mm-hmm. And so the thing is, you have a thing like what happened with Gideon at soccer.
Yeah.
It's a pain point for at some level for your family. And so from that, when the emotion, when the suddenness of that dies down, you and Grant, you can't just go on. You have to kind of have a time when neither one of you are in the heat of it and say, let's talk about it. And you learn. And so you've learned from a pain point. Or some families, because they don't want conflict, they just push it under the rug. Well, guess what? The pain happens again.
Yeah.
And this next time it's a little more difficult. And the next time it's a little more difficult because you haven't had the conversation about what can we learn from this? How can we grow as parents?
Yeah. That takes intentionality too, I feel like. And I don't know if anyone listening is like us, we can get so busy that you just forget. So you're not intentionally pushing it under the rug. You're just like going about with the rest of the stuff that's being thrown your way. So what would be a way to make sure you're having those intentional conversations with your spouse or with someone you're co-parenting with?
Scheduling. I mean, that's my new thing, right? You just schedule it. Intentionality means, hey, we're going to make sure that once a month, we're going to have a time to talk about how we can improve as parents. Everybody wants to be better parents.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about those things. One of the things that one of my friends has taught me, and I'm really thinking about how we could put this in our toolkit because it's helped me a lot, is it's kind of a personal growth plan, and it's, in what areas of my life do I want to make progress this year? And a couple, if they're doing that together, can be, I want to make progress in our marriage. I want to make progress as a parent. We want to make progress in our finances. We want to make progress. Pick whatever the areas are, and then rank yourself where you are, as a couple on a scale of 1 to 10, and it doesn't matter, right? I mean, he may think you're a 3 and you may think you're a 7. Okay, well, let's meet in the middle and say that's where it is. And then the goal is just to get better that year. And so what are we going to have to do to get better? And then once a month, you're going to just get together and say, hey, man, most of life is not a 70-yard reverse pass touchdown in the closing seconds. It's 2 yards. You move the ball. And so you don't, if you're at a 2, you don't have to get to an 8 next month. You just need to understand that a 2.2 is a win, And so I've just seen this to work in my own life personally in the areas I want. As this Goby thing is brand new for me. Going out and talking to people about these things, helping people, that's natural for me. I've done it for my entire life, but like strategically operating a nonprofit business, I've never done it. And so I'm trying to learn, and I'm trying to, here's some ways I want to grow, and here's some things I want to learn, and need to understand technology better. And I need to understand finances better, and, all of those things. And that's not going to just happen unless I put some intentionality to it.
Yeah. I think too, it would be helpful for us, like when we're having those intentional meetings, whether it's me and him together, or we're just having some reflection on our own individual growth, having a guideline of things we're going to talk about. So it's like you're talking about personal growth for the year, having those for the month, so that we know we can be thinking about it instead of just coming. Because where I have found with Grant and I that's hard is we'll go on a date and we want to talk about intentional things and we just can't remember. Or we're like, what was it that happened? I don't know. So having like something that we know we're going to work on or we're going to talk about, these are the areas that we're going to talk about once a month. So that maybe we can work on that tool. That would be really helpful for me personally.
Yeah. To me, it's just life happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just, so the only way, if one of my goals for the year is to be an encourager, and that means I need to send 6 texts a week to people that I know, just to tell them I love them, I believe in them, I'm praying for them. Hope you're doing good. I sent one 2 days ago to somebody you and I both know, ministry leader in another state, and just said, hey, just thinking about you. Hope you're good. Prayed for you today. That was it. But if I don't put that in my schedule, I'll look up at the end of the month and go, oh crap, I didn't text anyone, because life happens.
Yep.
And I'm the older I get, the more I understand the power of that kind of intentionality.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you have any last parting words for us as we end this episode?
I just think that I've been talking to so many people in so many different places lately that what I just said about a marriage is true about a life. It's so easy to get focused on deficiencies. I mean, you get locked in on deficiencies, and we need to be aware of deficiencies, but it is okay. I want to give you moms like permission to say, hey, I'm doing pretty good in this area. That's okay. It's not, I don't sense people having a pride problem that I talk to. I have people who are defeated by their defeats. And just because you've lost in the last month does not make you a loser. Because I guarantee in something you are winning. There's a place that you are winning. Everybody can find a place that they're winning.
For sure.
If you're listening to this today, you have some type of electronic device that you had to plug in to get electricity, which makes you, you're winning. If it's not a competition, but you're better than 2/3 of the world. So you're right, and so we just have to remember those and train ourselves to those things.
Yes, for sure. I agree. And as we're learning, we can help our kids.
Yeah, because kids are shaped by what they see, not what we say.
That's for sure. For sure. Well, thanks, Dad. I took a lot of notes. So
hug my sweet
that.
Grandkids today.
I will.
Hug Giddy and Micah and Minnie, because now Esther has decided her name is Minnie.
Yeah, she had a great time, so she had to change her name.
So, well, I hope you have a great day. I love you.
You too.
I'm excited about coming to Mississippi soon.
I know. We're excited. Counting down the days. All right.
Love you.
Thank y'all for joining another episode of Hey Dad, Can You Talk? I hope you walked away with some tangible things that you can do when you're struggling with losing in your own life or your kids struggling with losing, and to remember that you're not a loser in the moments that you feel like you're losing. I don't know, that really stuck out to me. I took a lot of notes that I know I'm going to take back to my husband and we're going to chat about, and just things I need to work on for myself when I feel like I'm losing in life. So I hope you were encouraged today, and we look forward to being with you on another episode, not next Wednesday, but the next. Talk to y'all later.